Welcome to the Gridiron Unfiltered podcast, powered by Recon Sports, the show where we take a deep dive into the world of sports performance. I'm your host, Danny Davis, and today we're talking about leadership that challenges the norm, inspires resilience, and equips people to thrive not just on the field, but in life. Our guest today is someone who embodies that exactly. He was the Chief Technology Officer at Epirus, where he was the driving force in radar and defense systems. He was the president and CEO of Spartan Radar, where he spearheaded the technology for autonomous and commercial vehicles. He's a powerful TEDx speaker and a phenomenal mentor. But what really sets him apart is his people-first approach and his bold anti-preneur philosophy, a framework that redefines what financial freedom looks like for professionals who want to grow their wealth while also exceeding at their careers. Dr. Matt Markel, welcome to the show.
Danny, thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here.
Awesome to have you. So, Dr. Matt, you and I met a few weeks ago at an event where you gave a phenomenal presentation on your new book, The Anti-Preneur, and your overall broader vision. And what really stood out to me was how you connect financial conversations to overall performance. Can you talk about the importance of having strong financial health and how it can have a profound impact on both short-term and long-term success?
Absolutely. When we think about, so first of all, just a little bit backing up, the whole concept of anti-preneur is really there to dispel two big myths that I see that are out there with people today. For people that are working in a W-2 or 1099 type position, they're working for a company, there's these two myths that hit them hard. The first myth is that you can't be successful financially unless you're an entrepreneur, which is just blatantly false. There's multiple examples of cases where that's not true. There's corporate leaders like we're all familiar to seeing, the Tim Cooks and the Mary Barras. There's also sports people that are that you talk about probably quite a bit. Tom Brady made substantially more on the field than off the field, and during his NFL career. And then there's a lot of folks that are doing that as well. You just don't know about it because they're not famous like those folks. So myth one is like you have to be an entrepreneur to be successful financially. The second myth is that if you just put a little bit of money in a 401k for years and years and years, somehow auto-magically at the end of your career, everything will be fine and you'll be able to retire and do everything you'd ever want to. And that is often just not the case as well. So the whole concept of the anti-preneur mindset is ownership. It's ownership of your career. It's ownership of your career, and it's ownership of your financial situation. And that's what we're talking about in everything we do with Anti-Preneur, those two aspects, your career and your financial situation. So specifically, when we think about financial literacy and having a good grasp of that, it's really befuddling that we spend so much time researching what our next phone is going to be, or our next laptop is going to be, or where we're going to go for dinner, or where we're going to go out on a date. We spend so much time researching that and coming up to speed and learning. It's like, oh, well, this place here has a new chef. Let's go try that. Or the iPhone 16 with Pro has all these cameras, or whatever the situation is. So you become an expert on that. Yet, one of the single most things that's responsible for our ultimate success and our ultimate ability to thrive is our finances, yet we kind of just set it and forget it. So that's what we talk about as well, is like how to take ownership of your financial situation.
And another thing that you mentioned in your presentation was almost this weird feeling when it comes to talking about the financial health, in at least in the workplace. You talk all the time about charts and dashboards and metrics and success metrics within the company. And it's almost like weird to maybe talk about the financial health when really that could be a huge driving force. Why do you think it feels awkward to talk about that, especially in the workplace?
As we look, great question, great observation, Danny. As we look at how our workplace has evolved so I've been in the workforce about 35 years. As we look at how that's evolved over the last 35 years, when I started out, we couldn't talk about mental health or depression or substance abuse or sexual harassment or gender identity. All those things were off the table. Those were all taboo topics. And money was also taboo. But as we have grown as a society, as we've matured as a society, as we have realized that the workplace, to be truly successful, cannot be transactional, we've broken down those barriers. So now we can talk to our employees about mental health and substance abuse and depression, all these sorts of things. We have a whole lot of benefits that are geared towards that. The do you have a best friend at work concept, the gyms or healthy food options that are available in many workplaces. So we've addressed all that, but the one that still remains taboo is money. It is easier to go to your boss and say, I'm struggling with anxiety about the presentation we've got next Thursday, than it is to go to your boss and say, I'm struggling with anxiety about retirement. And it doesn't have to be like that, but unfortunately it is.
Agreed. And when I look at it in the athlete sphere right now in sports, I work with some of the top college football teams in the country, and one thing they really embrace is this holistic approach to performance. The power of looking at everything across their entire program when it comes to data. You're able to see now if one node is failing, it's often because another node is driving that. And now with the amount of money that we're seeing influxed into young athletes with college football, does a financial piece need to be a part of that node that's not only setting them up for success when they're playing on the field, but also setting them up for success once they leave that university?
Absolutely. I couldn't imagine giving a 18, 19-year-old the keys to or I guess they don't really have keys, but like an F-15 fighter jet or an F-22 fighter jet. They don't really have keys. They're actually, I don't know. I've been in an F-22 simulator. I've never actually been in a real F-22, but it was the simulator was already set up, so I didn't have to I don't know if they have keys or anything like that or a key fob. But we wouldn't turn the stick over to an 18 or 19-year-old to fly one of these fighters without a whole lot of training and a whole lot of instruction and a whole lot of coaching and a whole lot of hey man, you're gonna encounter these things. I've got your back. I'm a phone call away. We wouldn't do that, right? But we do that with their finances. Well, all right, here you go. And sometimes they've gone from situations with very little money, very little wealth, very little income, to now with NIL, perhaps a substantial amount more. So this concept of we're just going to turn it over to these kids just seems to not make very much sense to me. So I would love to see that aspect being taught, but it has to be taught in a couple different ways. There's different levels. The first thing I think we should do is basic financial literacy, right? The concept of don't spend more than you make. Save money. Don't, every time you get a raise, every time you get a paycheck, the goal is not to see how quickly you can get that spent. So basic financial literacy. But then the trick is we need to move into real wealth creation and understanding the whole concept of assets and understanding the concepts of different types of investing and cash flow and so forth. So I think that should absolutely be a part of the training, and basically it should be part of our commitment to these players, to these athletes.
Yeah, I agree. And even thinking about it, it's it almost feels kind of strange asking, for maybe if I'm a director, asking for financial information or checking the health on that, or having that part of the equation, which you can make it an argument it's an invasion of privacy. But when you look at all of the other nodes on the DEXA scans and the body weights and the cognition and the academics, there's no privacy when it comes to that, and that's all driving. So I think it's really important to know maybe there's got to be a balance between what maybe the directors see and this maybe invasion of privacy, but I definitely think it needs to be a strong emphasis on what they're doing with their careers in that short time to set them up for generational wealth. So if you were advising an athlete who's maybe not making a ton of money, like millions of dollars, but he's going to be there for 4 years, and he walks away with $400,000 in career earnings. What can he do with that money to maybe set him up for success once he leaves that university?
So before we talk about what to do with that 400 grand, I think because if you think about it, like no one's going to retire on 400 grand right now, right? That's, or at least if you do, your quality of life is going to be substantially different than it in the wrong way. And especially if he gets out of school, like, 22, 23, something like that, living another 60, 70 years on 400 grand that's going to be very difficult. So the main thing to think about is, like, what is this individual's earning potential going to be as they leave college? What are they going to be doing? How are they going to keep putting money into their personal system throughout their career? So focus on that versus focused on, because that's actually probably more important and will have a bigger payoff than putting 400 grand in a multifamily or a series of syndications or some debt security or whatever the investments that are done with that. Looking at the earning potential and how are we going to maximize that's going to be where the main returns are going to come from.
Now, if we look at it from the coach's perspective, I recently posted about NIL money and how not like less than 1% of athletes are making more than $1 million. And I think that same lens applies to the coaching staff. You see these multi-million-dollar contracts from like head coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. But when you look at the staff collectively, there's over 100 people that support that program. They're not all making that money. And, they probably just middle class, kind of maybe living paycheck to paycheck, and there's a revolving door within the system. What can individuals do that are maybe coaches or directors to help set them up for success so they're not coaching until they're 75 years old?
So in the book, we talk about a 5-step process to kind of move yourself from the pains and struggles of the paycheck to paycheck mentality to confidence and security. So I would just definitely recommend working through those steps. And the first step is all about the mindset. You have to understand that no one deserves to be financially secure any more than you. But if you're still hung up on, oh, that's only for this type of person or this type of individual, that's only for Nick Saban, or that's only for whatever, to be financially secure, financially set, financially independent. If you can't see yourself as that being applying to you, and that you will act in visualizing that you can get there, you won't. You won't do it. There's a famous phrase, I believe it was originally from Henry Ford, but I think the person I heard it from was the great author and author coach Peggy McCall. She basically says that she's got this kind of like quippy little accent. She's like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So that mindset is the most important aspect of it. And then we get into the next step is understanding where we are today. If I said, Danny, how do I get to Knoxville? You started giving me directions. That's probably a mistake, because the first thing you should ask is like, well, Matt, where are you coming from? I know you live in Dallas, but sometimes you're in LA, sometimes you're on the Gulf Coast. So you got to know where you're coming from in order to find out how to get there. If you're coming from Boston, you're going to be, the GPS is going to be looking entirely differently than if you're coming from LA. So knowing where you stand today is really the key part. And that comes down to basically 3 types of assessments. The first is your balance sheet, which is, if you think of like corporations, if you do any stock information, you can find out the balance sheets for any publicly traded company. You see, basically it's their assets minus their liabilities equals their equity. So you add up all your assets, which are things like, okay, I have a bank account with 10 grand in it. I have a a retirement, a 401k with X amount of money in it. So you add up all your assets, subtract all your liabilities, which are typically loans, things like, okay, I have a car loan, I've got a house loan, I'll subtract all those out. And that difference, that's like the equity in the business of you. So the balance sheet, and the next sheet to look at is what's your cash flow, right? Or where is your money going? How much is coming in? How much is going out? Hopefully, what's coming in is at least as much as what's going out. If not, then you probably got a real situation to get your head wrapped around. But looking at where the money's going and how much is coming in. And then the third is basically your asset protection plan. How are you protecting your assets? Do you have things set up in the right way that you're protected should something happen to you, so that you're protected from legal ramifications, you're protected from if something happens to you, that your assets don't become tied up in probate or some other government situation. So basically, how are you protecting your assets as well? And then how are you protecting your assets from a tax situation? So those kind of three resources on knowing where you are. Then look at where's your career going? Where do you want to be financially? How do you get there? And then 5 is just taking the first steps to get started. So that's basically the plan. It's all kind of right there in the book. And but the main thing again starts with that mindset. You have to get your head wrapped around, I own this. I now have 2 careers. I have my career, and I have the planning and execution of a financial strategy that will get me to where I need to be and where I want to be and where I deserve to be.
Before we jump back into the show, a quick shout out to one of our proud sponsors, Gardner Roofing. If you're looking for a roofer you can trust, Gardner Roofing has been Colorado's go-to team since 1998. They're family owned, built on integrity, and they treat every roof like it's their own. Whether it's repairs, a full replacement, or just a free inspection, Gardner Roofing is the name Colorado trusts. Check them out at gardnerroofs.com or give them a call at 303-332-6224. Gardner Roofing, their family has your family covered. One of the things that you talk about in your book is like the first step, and you mentioned it earlier in the conversation with an athlete. Almost the first step is investing into yourself and to make more money in the future. If you just put it into a certain account or even a multifamily, it's kind of capped on its earning potential. But you as an individual, if you invest in yourself, and I'm going to read a quote from your book here, it says your skills and the employer you use them for are different and separable. You need to think of yourself like a free agent who plays like hell for the current team you're on, i.e. the company you work for. But when the time is right, you can negotiate to go to another team or get a better offer from the one you're on. Matt, can you talk about what that means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a big mistake that I see so many people making right now when they allow their identity to become associated with their job. Okay, and what I mean by that, Danny, is if your identity is, I'm the director of such and such at XYZ Corporation. I'm the director of customer service for search at Google. I'm the director of produce at Kroger, or HEB, or whatever their grocery store you want to use as. I guess in Florida, Piggly Wiggly, right? Do they still have those there? So so you basically allow your job, or I'm the VP of this at this company, to become part of your identity. That's a mistake, because something happens, that corporation changes hands, they do a layoff, they get into tough times, they merge with somebody else, and they do a restructuring of your position, and your position is now gone. Well, now that rips a part of your identity away from you, and that's horrible. That's just terrible. That's like part of your soul being ripped away from you. But instead, realize that your career, no one can take that away from you. So think about your career is, what are the skills, what are the capabilities that you have? And I like to phrase that in a way that it's a little trick that you can use to understand your career. There's obviously specifics for experience and so forth, and that each individual person has, but the trick is, think of it in filling out this sentence: I help X get Y by doing Z. So maybe I help senior leaders achieve their goals by working with them until they have extreme clarity and focus. So that might be for an executive coach, or for somebody like that. Or one of the things that, similar to what I had done in the different engineering companies I led. I help engineering teams deliver fantastic products by breaking down the internal barriers that prevent cross-functional collaboration. So I help X get Y by doing Z. And then no one can take that away from you, right? That's not tied to Kroger or Google or the Tesla or anything else. That's yours. And so getting that really, your head really, really wrapped around that is absolutely critical, because that lets you then become, okay, I am now an awesome baseball analogy. I'm an awesome catcher, and I've got an on-base percentage that's one of the top in the league. So that's okay, great. That's a skill that you can have whether you're playing for the Cards, whether you're playing for the Cubs, whether you're playing for the Reds, whomever. Yeah,
and I think that having that framework, we're not really taught how to invest into ourselves, in my opinion, especially maybe in your 20s. No one really teaches you what investing in yourself means. And if you have that statement, what it is that you do, and then you have that GPS location of where you want to go, those two metrics now that you have, that's where you can kind of piece together, okay, maybe I need to go take this course or this class or get myself in front of this mentor to be able to help you get to that GPS location, instead of maybe just hoping Kroger doesn't have a management shift or hoping Tesla stock doesn't crash. You're able to control your destiny that much more.
Absolutely. And I see so many people that will do things to fill time, thinking that they're moving in the right direction instead of investing in themselves. For example, so let's say you're making $100,000 a year. Okay. The $100,000 a year is about $50 an hour, because there's around 2,000 working hours in a year. So it's like 2080, I think, but it's like, just for the easy math, because I can do easy math. Let's say it is, so you're making around $50 an hour. So some people think like, well, I want to make more money. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drive for Uber. Okay. So, well, how much do you make as an Uber driver? Maybe $15 an hour, $20 an hour, before you even factor in the fuel, the depreciation on your car, the insurance, and everything else that you have to pay. So you're trading up. So you make $50 an hour at your job, but now you're adding in all these extra things, which are a distraction, that make you net $10 to $15 an hour, something like that. Instead of saying like, okay, I'm going to take a class, get a mentor, be part of a program, and I'll talk a little bit about a program I've got coming out later this year that may help some people here. Get on a program and invest in yourself, because that could, let's say you get a 10% raise out of that. You work hard to get a 10% raise. Well, that's now $10,000 a year. How many hours are you going to have to drive for Uber each year for the rest of your life to get back that $10,000 salary bump that you got from investing in yourself? It just doesn't make any sense. And then because you're driving for Uber, you're distracted, you're tired, you're not being your best self. The probability that you're going to get that, a raise at all is less, because you're now not performing at work, because you're distracting your time, splitting your focus. And if there is a layoff, you might be the one that gets let go, because he's always tired at work, and I think it's because he's driving all the time at Uber to make, and he comes in and he's like, oh, I made $150 yesterday on that. Well, yeah, but at what cost? So yeah, investing in yourself is absolutely the key. That's almost like when people say like, hey, Matt, I've got $500 to invest. The best thing to do on that is invest in yourself. Because let's say $500, let's say $1,000. I've got $1,000 to invest. What should I invest? Should I buy Teslas? Should I, let's say your stock did a 5 bagger, you did 5 times return 5x. Still only $5,000, right? How far is that going to get you? Whereas that $1,000 invested in yourself to really get that clarity, to understand your financial goals, to understand how to do better in your career, to understand how to put it all together, that's golden. That'll pay 1,000%.
That is golden. And I think it takes a lot of self-confidence to be able to do that and be able to trust yourself to lay out this plan and execute this plan and have that vision, is there any advice that you can give once you're doing this, where to find that confidence, where to find that perseverance to make sure that you're going in the right direction to ultimately trust yourself to accomplish where you want your GPS location to be?
The best thing is to get started. Okay. So to take that first step, and taking that first step, here's a trick I use a lot of times when I'm coaching individuals. When we've kind of got an idea of what their goal is, and I've used this in individual coaching. I've actually used this when I was leading teams. I went and setting them up for a personal development plan for the year. I've used this trick for both of us. Like, once we get it figured out, okay, I want to accomplish this. I want to do this. Then I ask them, okay, Danny, what's one thing you can do by, it's where I am right now, it's 12:24 Central Time. What can I do by 12:24 tomorrow, exactly 24 hours from now, to get started? And I don't let them go until they answer that. Because somebody's like, well, I'll get, and by the end of next week, I'll have done. It's like, nope, I don't want to hear that. Or by the end of Q1, it's like, nope, what can you do to get started in the next 24 hours? Is it sign up for a class? Is it pull your bank statements and get your bank statements all lined up on your desk so you can look at where you are? Is it download or email me about an asset protection plan or a balance sheet, simple balance sheet formula? Whatever it is, take that first step and get that done within 24 hours, because actions build momentum, and then that momentum will build confidence. That's how to get it started. That's how to get it done, is by getting started.
I love that. And now once you're there and you have momentum, one of the biggest things that could almost maybe crush you in a sense is when maybe things don't go right or your strategy is off, and it's now dealing with failure. And is this even worth it? Is this courses that I'm taking worth it? What would be your advice on handling failure throughout this entire process?
When we don't do well with setbacks, it is because we've somehow convinced ourselves, erroneously, but we have somehow convinced ourselves that we will not have setbacks, right? If you think that, like, I'm just going to go straight from here to here, it's going to be upward all the way, and if that's the model in your mind, then a setback is like, well, wait a minute, this is not, I quit. Dr. Markel, he doesn't know anything. Danny doesn't know anything. I'm shutting this podcast off. It's, but what they have to realize, like, everything will have setbacks. Every single thing will have setbacks and course corrections that are required. And if you go in knowing that, then you're not going to be a less than best version of yourself. You're going to be able to deal with that. You're going to like, this is the setback. This is I knew that these were going to be coming. Here is one of them. Since I knew it was going to be coming, I'm mentally prepared to be able to deal with that, right? As opposed to like, well, I didn't think I've had any setbacks, and now it's soul crushing. I had in one of the companies I was leading once, I had this guy, and if you follow my stories on any of the social stuff, this is the Bob the salesman story. So I had this guy who was kind of in charge of sales for this one company, and I was doing a big turnaround on the company, and he was in the wrong spot, just 100% in the wrong spot. But I was bringing in somebody who was really going to be a rock star. But in the meantime, I kind of had to deal with Bob, and every time I would go into a meeting with Bob for an update, Bob would have some bad news, like something that was supposed to get done didn't get done. This deal that was supposed to get signed didn't get signed. We were supposed to be making this much 30% margin on something, and he was trying to negotiate us at like 7% margin or something. Something that was like really a setback every single time. And I was kind of losing my cool on it. I was like, I would get upset, get mad. And it was a tough, very, very tough time as a wartime CEO. But I realized, like, that's not the person I want to be. That's not the leader I want to be. So what I did was I played this little mental trick on myself. I said, like, every time I go into a meeting with Bob Bob is going to disappoint me. He's going to have some piece of bad news. Now, if you've ever watched a horror film, right, like Friday the 13th or Halloween or something like that, when the one arrogant teenager goes by himself into the shed at night, you know what's going to happen, right? You kind of know, if you've seen any film like that, the one arrogant teenager that no one likes, he's going into the shed, and yeah, he's going to get killed by Freddy or by Jason or Michael Myers or whatever. So you know what's going to happen. So I went into every meeting with Bob, like, this is going to happen, and I would just wait for it to happen. I was like, okay, well, and then you do your standard thing, like, well, do we think we know why this happened? Do we think, is there a way to get around this? What do you think the best way forward for us is? Basically, you can be calm about all of that. But, and then every so often, very few times, but every so often, there's a meeting with Bob, didn't disappoint me. Then I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like freaking Christmas, because, there's no disappointments after my meeting with Bob. So, getting your head in the right mental state to be able to just expect things to not go your way and realize that you have gotten through every single thing else in your life to this point. You can get through this as well. Just accept that there's going to be setbacks and deal with it, and you'll be fine.
You got to know that it's coming. It's not all going to be perfect. And the way that you thought it out in your mind, if you think that that's the first thing is going to be the way that you get there, you're wrong. So know that going into it, and that you're going to have to figure it out. And it makes it easier and almost makes it kind of fun, to be honest with you. When you're putting together this book and these different principles, and as you're looking at it, is there anything that we should change in our education system today from K through 12 that, with technology, we're enlightened more with this knowledge? Is there anything that you think should change in terms of the curriculum from K through 12 to help the next generation through both technology changes and both just enlightening changes?
So I think that as we look to our education system, the concepts of how we talk about some big things that are sort of not typical education sort of topics, but how we talk about things like money, how we talk about things like nutrition, how we talk about things like confidence. If we can start building those principles in early, I think, who knows what this next, the generation that will be in the K through 12s. If we can start building that in when somebody's in kindergarten now, how much farther can they go, and how much easier can it be when they're not in their 30s and like, well, yeah, you do have to pay your taxes, or this was if I'm, I shouldn't spend I got a raise of $100 a week, so I'm going to spend 120 now because I'm gonna, because I deserve this lifestyle. How much better would it be if we would teach those sorts of things early so that it's ingrained in people as this smarter, more enlightened way to think about it? Same with nutrition also, right? So there's a lot of stuff that is, I don't want to get into like all the kind of the politics of, food pyramids and so forth, but there's just a lot of ways we can be a lot smarter on how we teach our kids about, about health, exercise, nutrition, rest, all these sorts of things that are really not the core curriculum of, history, geography, math, social studies, whatever, the reading, English, that are outside of those core things. They're more life concepts and life principles. But if we can teach them as well during that time frame, how much more awesome would that be?
Big time. And it's, I was thinking of the financial literacy to the degree of it when you buy a house, maybe you're 18 or early 20s and you buy a house, and then you start to see your payments, and that 80 to 90% of that first year all went to interest. None of it went to the house. And it's like, wait, what? So even financial literacy to that aspect, I think there needs to be a change, and to keep up with the times and almost educate them to go solve problems and see what it is that they're getting into. From a parent's perspective, maybe for someone that has given up on the school system but doesn't have a choice to take them elsewhere. Is there anything that parents can be doing at home with, young teenagers throughout their 0 through 18 to help better prepare them for life once they leave the house?
So I'm not a parent, so I don't want to go off the deep end on giving advice in that area. But if I were to talk to someone who is in that age range, I would teach them that there's a lot of school that focuses on the accumulation of knowledge, right? There's not a lot of school that focuses on the ability to solve problems, which often requires an accumulation of knowledge or the knowledge of how to accumulate knowledge, but teach them how to solve problems and how to think through problems, right? So just the fact that when you think back to math class, if you're doing like arithmetic sort of things, if there's just 7 times 5 equals, and you put fill in the blank, everybody liked those more than, a train leaves Boston at, at 7 p.m. traveling 65 miles. So all those word problems. The word problems are really the way life presents things to us. No one says all right, if we can figure out what 7 times 5 is, we'll make our numbers for the next quarter. Well, nothing's presented like that. So it's well, we got this mishmash of data coming in, and we have delays in the shipping of this product here. We have some problems over here. We have a manufacturing issue over here. But we got this that is doing very well in some test markets. Those are the types of things that you have to figure out. So solving problems, that to me, I think is the biggest thing that we can work to teach our children today.
Agreed. That's phenomenal. Dr. Markel, you said you had an event coming up.
So I have so there's a couple things. We just launched the Anti-Preneur weekly newsletter, and this is really solid. So after I wrote the book and it became an Amazon #1 bestseller, I had some people coming up to talk to me, and they were like, what we really want are two things. One, book's great, concepts are great, but I want something to kind of help me keep the momentum going. Okay. And the second thing they want is they want some more tactical examples on how to apply the principles. So what I did was I thought about that. I was well, the first step in how I can address those needs is through a weekly newsletter. So I get subscribed to a lot of newsletters from a lot of different people. Many of them, I've gotten to the point, I don't even open it. It's not valuable to me. It doesn't have anything that I'm going to really be able to use. It's if I'm bored or I have some extra time, I might read it for some enjoyment. But the main thing is it's just not giving me anything tactically that I can use. And the other thing is I see some that are coming every day, every other day. I was whoa, too much. So the newsletter is once a week, 2 tips, one on how to thrive in your career, another one how to achieve financial success. It's in, it's out, it comes out on Mondays. So if you go to anti-preneur.com, you can sign up now, and you'll get that newsletter for free forever, or as long as you want to keep getting it. So that's one thing. Second thing, we're launching our Thrive and Achieve podcast as well, which is going to be talking to a variety of professionals in HR and in business and in financial leadership to do everything we possibly can to help the W-2 and 1099 employees. So we'll be launching that here very shortly. And then later in Q4, we'll be building out our online community for a lot more information, a lot more details, with courses and everything that'll be coming out. So just a lot of stuff as I really lean in hard into this mission that's going to be coming out. And you can find out how to do all of it by just signing up simply at anti-preneur.com, anti-preneur.com.
Phenomenal. Folks, I'm subscribed to it. I have my whole team subscribed to it. Great information, just like you said, quick in and out, and then you can expand from there. Dr. Matt Markel, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I know you just said it, but where can people find you at? And we'll put it on the screen here for people to go look you up and reach out and follow some of the great stuff you're doing.
You can follow me on LinkedIn, and you can follow me on Facebook as well. Both of those are, and I'll get you the links on all of that. But I think I'm the only Matt Markel that looks like me on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of great content that's coming out there, as well as on the Meta platforms. It's Dr. Matt Markel. It's like leadership, strategy, and success, something like that. So we put a lot of content out there that is because, as I was talking to somebody the other day about this and why I'm leaning so hard into this is that they're like, well, Matt, you're doing this now. You're actually kind of like an entrepreneur, even though you wrote this book, Anti-Preneur. I was like, well, actually, I don't think of this like a business. I don't think of myself as like an entrepreneur. This for me is a mission. So,
Love it. And you can go find his book on Amazon, Anti-Preneur, antipreneur.com. Folks, definitely go check him out. That's all for this episode. Thanks to everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the Fan Day Nation so you don't miss out on future episodes. And we'll see you next time.